In the morning, only the thinnest wisp of blue smoke rose from the thing's fire pit, so faint that Dro's compound eyes could barely discern it against the purple bush beyond. The hidden flame had kept them safe from any roving eyes in the night, but only marginally warmer than no fire at all. She tried nesting close to her other heat source, the thing's stomach, which had been laying right behind her carapace, but instead she bumped into something much harder. She rolled over and found Treat still asleep beside her, but no thing. "Treat, get up!" She nudged the sleeping Klakan. "She's gone." "What? Who? Who else? The thing?" "Probably went to get some more firewood," Treat's half-awake mandibles mumbled. Dro disagreed. Not only was the thing missing, but so too was her throwing spear. Had she abandoned Dro and Treat? Had she been captured by the Wrathy? The panic was rising towards her pheromone glands, but Dro swallowed it down and scanned the edge of the camp for any sign of their companion. There were too many footprints here, and Dro was a ship drone, not a game tracker. She had no way to know which were fresh. She headed for the first reasonable place to look, the creek where they gathered the fire-starting moss and fresh water. But that left her still with no thing and nowhere else to look. Exasperated, she sat down on a river rock and dipped an aimless claw in the stream, letting the cold water soothe her. Her eyes settled on an odd clump of grass across from the stream from her. Half the blades had been shorn off by something. Not all in one place, as if some animal was trampling by or munching on it, but here and there, seemingly at random. She got up and clambered across the creek to examine it more closely. She tried snapping off one of the long blades, as long as her foreleg. The break she made looked just like the others, like someone had gone picking them. Why pick these strands of grass? They didn't look all that edible to her stomach, or to her Wrathies. Maybe to the things, she supposed. She looked around for any more signs of her friend. Sure enough, she found one long printed mud, not clawed like a Wrathie's foot or thin and segmented like her own. It led off into the forbidding brush, the leaves casting long early morning shadows, the last shades of night. With a gulp, Dro followed the trail. Not long after, just around a few twists and bends, a little bit of red blocked her path. A neat pile of little berries sitting surprisingly untouched in the centre of the game trail, looking so bright and juicy against the violet and blue foliage. She wondered only briefly where they came from. No berry bushes surrounded her. Perhaps the thing had dropped some while picking, but that was too much wondering for her empty stomach. She was just about to reach them when a shadow pounced on her. She rolled into the brush onto her back, a hunk of sighing flesh holding her down. Dro blinked at her attacker. It was the thing. She wrinkled her pudgy face at Dro's rotten fear scent, then bared her teeth at her, the friendly greeting, Dro reminded herself, despite all her chemical impulses telling her otherwise. She picked up Dro and set her standing back on the trail, brushing off the twigs caught between her KItten. Then, with cautious steps and her throwing spear in hand, she poked around the edge of the berries, pushing away some of the scattered ground cover. On a second look, Dro realised the dead leaves weren't scattered, but heaped up in a ring around them. Underneath them, the spear caught a fibrous rope of some kind, and with a snap, flew out of the thing's hand and high into the air, dangling from an overhead branch by a noose fashioned from the same grass Dro had seen torn off by the creek. The thing clattered her teeth together, then said something in her strange language. Dro didn't need her to say anything. She recognised the trap. A clever one at that. Certainly the thing could catch some kind of animal here, if she almost caught Dro. Together, the two set a few more snares through the woods, stopping where the thing spotted little tracks, hardly more than scratches in the dirt. Today was Dro's third day on this planet, already more than she had spent outside a spaceship or a station her whole life. She was glad to have the thing. She couldn't survive out in the wilderness without this big flesh bag, strolling through this forest like it was her own home. Home. Home had been the ship and the ship queen, and now Dro had neither. Maybe if the thing would take her, Dro would join her when she escaped back to her homeworld, and that was a conviction as certain in Dro's mind as the rocky ground beneath Dro's feet. The thing would find a way back there, no matter what stood in her way. The leisurely stroll beside her dropped into an alert crouch in an instant, snapping Dro out of her idle thoughts. Just ahead, they heard branches snapping and leaves rustling. The thing ushered her silently off the path, and they waited behind a thick tree, huddled in the bushes, while huge, furry legs lumbered past. The Wrath stopped and sniffed the ground with a shoe's snout, right where the thing and Dro had just been walking. Dro saw the scar across his drooping, glassy eye, and held her fear scent back with all her might. The thing adjusted the spear in her wide-knuckled grip. "Don't!" Dro wanted to cry. "A little spear like that couldn't kill that monster." The Wrath snorted and marched on. To Dro's alarm, 3 more followed it in single file, each giving the trail a passing whiff. They had never smelled the thing before. Maybe they assumed she was one of the local fauna. When those endless seconds had finally passed, she and the thing let out one shared sigh of relief. They hurried back to camp. It would take steel cable, not strands of grass, to snare one of those giants. Fortunately, the thing seemed to have something else in mind. Back at camp, they found Tree snacking on some more fungus and poking the fire and quickly drafted the soldier into service. The thing led them out from camp, along the obvious trail and most likely avenue of approach, then poured to the ground. Treat and Dro dug, while their companions sharpened the points of a growing pile of branches. When the pit the thing had traced out was deep enough for her liking, she planted the stakes in the bottom. "This won't work," Treat chittered. "Anybody can plainly see the open pit full of pointy sticks at the bottom." The thing wasn't finished. She laid more branch out in the grid over the pit, and covered those with dirt and loose debris. After a few steps back and a few more adjustments, her satisfied teeth flashed at them. They still knew the outline of the pit they dug, but anybody else might stumble right through that flimsy roof and plant a foot in stakes sharp as knives. "At night it'll be impossible to spot." Dro twitched with excitement. Treat shrugged, and the three returned to camp for a break. The thing strolled off in the direction of the creek, presumably to check her snares, but came back empty-handed, apart from a few more black river stones. She sat by the fire, hand on her stomach, ravenously eyeing their little pile of moss for a hole. Dro watched her finally chew on it, wince, then spit it out into the fire pit. Dro knew better than anyone what the thing looked like when she was starving. Her movements looked slower, clumsier. All this exercise certainly hadn't been helping, but the thing got up anyway, eyes still flickering with determination, and nudged the two clackons. She pawed in the air and made a few other gestures. "More traps?" Treat complained. "We saw Fort Raffi not far from here, Treat," Dro replied. "A hidden fire won't stop them if they find us by nose." They marched in a different direction, out from camp, but this time the thing asked for their assistance, tugging a fallen log as wide as Dro was tall, to the yoke of a green sapling. The thing took her spear point and sawed into the sapling, separating the skinny trunk from its roots, and turning it into a treacherously unsecured column. When the thing let go, it wobbled uncertain under the massive weight. Then the thing took more of its handmade cord and looped it around the base, stretching the lying taut across the trail, a tripwire that would pull the sapling loose, and drop that beam at an unsuspecting raft's head. They returned home, the thing's steps more plodding than ever, but still she ventured out to check their traps. She was gone for a long time, enough time that the shadows are starting to lengthen across their campsite into long slivers of shade. "I hope she finds something to eat," Dro spoke up. "You care an awful lot for her," Treat answered. "She saved our lives. Twice." "What do you think she eats, Dro?" She waved a patch of moss at her before tossing it between her mandibles. "Not this stuff," she munched. "What? You think she's keeping us just to eat us later?" "She hasn't got anything else. Sooner or later she might get desperate." Dro puffed up with peppery anger scent. "What's wrong with you? She's done nothing but help us since we landed. She's our friend, not an enemy." "Our only friends on this planet are each other, and maybe the rest of the drones if we can separate them from Hakaki. We're just bugs to these beasts, small enough to stomp. All I'm saying is we need to look out for ourselves first." Just then, footsteps crashed through the forest behind them. They turned to see the thing leap into view from the brush, startling them with her wide, wild eyes. She held up by one of her nooses a little furry creature, its pale stained with blood from the killing blow she'd made with her spear. Her smile looked absolutely feral. "You see," Treat warned, "she's a predator." The thing skinned and dressed the little varmint by the fire. It turned Dro's stomach, but she wouldn't allow Treat to see that. She wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, she watched the thing roast the meat on the fire and bite and gnaw into the gristle with savage delight, remaining as still as a stone to every gnash of their companion's teeth. Evening fell, and the two drones sat by the fire with their fleshy companion. The thing was sitting up straight now, eyes much more awake. There was even some more meat left over, but she was keeping that off to the side. Dro had seen the tray she devoured back on the ship. How could she restrain herself from every last bit of that morsel? It only made sense when she walked off in the directions of their traps, and returned without it. Dro realised the thing was leaving bait fit for a raff. She may have been just a savage in the eyes of Treat to anyone else, but Dro knew better. She knew just how clever her friend was. After dark, the thing completed 2 new spears for Dro and Treat. They accepted them, one graciously and one reluctantly. Dro tried rather ambitiously to throw one, but it made a pitiful thud just a few steps from her. The thing tried showing her, tried holding her foreleg as she threw it, but it was no use. She didn't have any rippling muscles in her shoulder. A howl interrupted their training, so loud it may have been just behind the brush surrounding them. It came in the direction of their stake trap. The thing doused the fire with handfuls of earth and begged them to follow. "Stay close, Dro. Make a break for it if we have to," Treat said. Dro wouldn't admit it to her, but she liked her chances better with the thing. They skittered up onto a hillside to look down on the trail from above. Their footsteps were muffled by the howling and the growls and grunts from the injured one's two friends. The thing racked her arm back, spear in hand. The other arm stretched out to point to the one trying to haul his comrade out of the pit. Then, with a powerful fluid motion, the spear soared out into the darkness and disappeared, only to reappear in the tiger's hairy side and issue an even more bellowing howl. The last raft spun about, looking for its hidden assailants. The thing stretched an open palm out to Dro and Treat. Dro handed her spear. It struck the last one moments later, but the beast was still alive and snarling with pained anger. Now, the tactics Dro knew ended, and the savagery began. The thing charged down the hillside, screamed with all her fury, tore the spear from the beast's side and stabbed it again. She dodged a swing of her meaty paw, then another, and continued jabbing the black point into its ribs. The beast slowed and slumped over, but its two friends were still kicking. Roar matched roar as the thing dove in for the one it first struck with a spear. Dro wanted to join the fight. She leapt up as soon as the thing had, but Treat held her back. "Let me go," she hissed, spraying anger scent. "Let the thing handle them," Treat said. "We'll sneak off and find our own way out of here." "But we can't leave her alone." "She can handle herself," Treat said. "Come on." Dro squirmed out of Treat's grasp. "You want to go your own way so bad? Then go." Treat's antenna twitched. "I can't leave without you." "Why not?" "I have to protect you. You're a ship drone." "The thing's one of us too," Dro declared. "Let's face it, she's our ship queen." "She's no ship queen of mine." Treat's mandibles gritted. "She's fed you, she's kept you warm, she's protected you. She's fighting for you and me right now. Sure sounds like a ship queen to me." "She's a primitive, Dro. We can't even understand what she says in those grunts of hers." A different scream pierced the night, too shrill for any wrath. The two clacking stomachs leapt into their throats. They sure could understand what that meant. The thing's opponent had sliced her across her chest from hip to shoulder. Even from here, Dro and Treat could see the clothing torn apart, blood gushing from the open wounds. The thing dodged another blow, but now seemed on the back foot, ducking and bounding away as the Wrath, still impaired with one of her spears, pressed her. "Treat, please," Dro begged. "Could you survive out here without her? If she dies, we'll both die out here with her." Treat saw the thing stumble and fall backwards, too exhausted to clamber back up. The Wrath was stalking up to her now, ready to deal the mortal blow. The thing's eyes were wide and not wild, wide with terror, staring death in the ugly, brutish face. "If not your ship queen, then she's your friend. Wouldn't you save a friend?" Soldier drones don't care about their own lives, Treat remembered. She remembered her own edition of their mental mantra. They only care about their friends. Treat didn't know why, but her legs suddenly started darting down the hill, skipping over rock and root, with one powerful leap onto the trail. The Wrath stopped and faced her. It drew back his mouth to reveal sharp canines, so unlike the things, regarding her as fresh meat. This mass of fur and muscle and claws and teeth personified the bloodlust she had thought she saw in the thing. It towered over her and filled her nostrils with her own fear scent. So she did what a terrified soldier drone does. She attacked. Her legs scurried her under one passing paw, and into the socket of one of his shoulders she rammed the spear the thing had made for her. It struck deep, and the beast's legs suddenly crumpled, taking the weight of the whole body with it. She darted out from underneath just in time to avoid getting crushed herself. It swiped again at her with another, but missed, now just as crippled as his friend in the pit. She darted around to the thing. There, Dro was helping her back on her feet, using her own carapace as support. The Wrath still had 3 good legs, and rose just as the thing did again. One last flurry of jabs, one last duck and dip under ferocious jaws and sharpened claws, and it was all over. All 3 Wrathy lay dying. But the thing was more wounded than they had ever seen her before, and slumped over against a tree. Treat ripped off her friend's pant leg, and tore it into strips. "Tie these around those wounds quickly. She'll bleed out fast if we don't," she instructed Dro. The thing winced and groaned in pain, taking shallow, sharp breaths. On unsteady feet they raised her, then gathered her back to camp. They laid the thing back down by the fire pit, which they tried to coax back to life. Dro fiddled with the thing's steel striker and flint, but it took her a long time to get the fire started to light, all the while with her companion groaning and hissing and gnashing and whispering something. But at last it caught again, and the thing stopped groaning so much, enjoying the short breath she could catch against the raking gashes across her chest. The 2 Clackens sat beside her, just as exhausted as her. "Thank you," Dro said to Treat. "She's not my ship queen. I won't call anyone your majesty, not even the Queen of Queens. But she is a friend," Treat admitted. Dro nodded. Her eyelids growing heavier and heavier, like the great crack of a falling tree in the forest. It came from somewhere behind her, but maybe she misheard things. Treat didn't seem much alerted by it either. and she was the soldier drone, so she would keep watch, right? Anyway, she thought, a short nap wouldn't hurt. They awoke to find the camp surrounded. Yellow eyes peered out from the brush, high above the eye level of any klaken. Huge paws stepped out into the clearing. Long snouts sniffed the air for the whiff of wood smoke, and a much more pungent but savoury aroma of bloodshed. Tshirt grabbed her spear. Get behind me, Dro, now! The thing awoke with as much alarm in her eyes, but could barely lift a single arm to resist now. The two bugs kept their backs to the fire, circling it while the 6 Raffi circled them. Dro cowered behind Tshirt carapace. One of them had a long battle scar running down his face, leaving his right eye glassy, drooping, useless. He snorted at his companions, while his good eye flashed a hungry glimmer at the 3 outcasts. The beast took a predatory step forwards, then another. Tshirt grabbed Dro, still behind her. Dro could escape, if she darted away between one of the Raffi's legs. And if Tshirt and the thing made a good distraction. The little ship drone had a big heart, a heart far worthier than anyone's to survive. Just as Tshirt prepared to shove Dro out from the fire pit and charge the one-eyed leader herself, a different gang of shadows smashed their way into the clearing, just as bulky as the first. They roared and sliced their way for the trio's captors, setting upon them with complete surprise. A brown-haired one set upon the leader with shining metal claws strapped around his paws, blades as long as Tshirt's leg. He gave that one-eyed leader a slice to the other side of his face, then one to his belly, and the killing cut to his neck, where a severed artery sprayed blood out onto the dirt. The whirlwind lasted only a few seconds. The new Raffi stood victorious over their prey without a single loss, still surrounding Tshirt, Dro, and the thing. Tshirt tensed. They were still going to be eaten, just by a different pack of beasts. She twisted Dro around to her front, ready to push her into the safety of the darkness. But the thing sat up and stopped her, her weakened hand squeezing Tshirt's foreleg gently, or perhaps just limply. She raised her other hand towards the brown Raff with the metal claws. To Tshirt's surprise, he raised his right forepaw in just the same way. It was then that Tshirt realized she was bait for a much larger trap.